Well, after doing a lot of videos on budget guns and what's going on in the gun market, I believe it's time for me to kind of talk about the Milsurplus market, which is quite different than either retro guns or our budget ARs and pistols and such. But before we get into it, if you would please hit subscribe, the like button, leave a comment, and if you could, become a member. Alright, thanks. Well, like I said, during these strange economic times and the way things are with the uncertainty, and also all these years of panic buying and gun buying and ammunition hoarding, this has created a situation where certain calibers of ammunition are just sitting there, and there is a floor. Take 9mm for example. You're not gonna find 1,000 rounds for less than, say, with shipping or depending on a deal, about 230 units to 250 units, and depending on the brand. Maybe you catch a flash sale, but everything does have a floor. Okay. Budget ARs, yeah, well, that's another story. Well, let's go to the Milsurplus. Okay, Milsurplus is a different market. Okay, what happens is when things dry up, there's a finite supply, and once it ends, that's it. There will be no more. Henceforth, the reason why a lot of Milsurplus firearms have skyrocketed in price. But curiously enough, I guess that with the economy being so bad, and it is global, there have been several different Milsurplus deals out there, and mainly the vast majority of them are handguns. Much like this CZ82, there's been a whole bunch of CZ70s showing up, in Polish P64s, which I thought that was dried up a long time ago. I believe the P83s, you won't see them anymore, but the 64s, you are. And the reason is, when I was there, a lot of your customs agents and different law enforcement officers like that, like a lot of our Berettas, come out from the Customs and Taxation Department. In other words, the IRS, okay, issued pistols and they're marked so. So a lot of these different administrations and that do carry sidearms. And a lot of these are being phased out, and that's why we see them. That's why we see Beretta 84s on the market. We even seen Beretta 34s that have the barrels all threaded to get past importation. And with the economy slowing down, these pistols are available at a pretty reasonable price as compared to what they were, say, 1.5 to 2 years ago, when their supply was kind of dried out. Another good example is the Star Model 30 that has come in recently, and if you go to a couple different places selling it, you will see that they have kind of lowered the price. I don't know if that's because the condition of the guns are not as good as the first ones that come out, but it is lower. So there are surplus bargains out there. As far as long arms or rifles, you did see some Swiss guns are trickling in little by little, and actually the Swiss firearms, their value has gone up a lot, and they were collectible and they were a hot item, depending on condition. Of course, a lot of these guns like K31s coming in are pretty well used, as compared to some pristine examples that showed up years ago. But they still kind of hold their value where they were edging up kind of high, but the Swiss guns, you know, because again, condition and that. So they've kind of, you can get one at a fairly reasonable price as compared to a few years ago when the supply dried up and they started escalating up in value. Okay. So that's basically the current stuff coming in that you could just go look and somebody is, you know, offering these things right now in quantity to where you can just place an order. Now, if we go into other firearms, you know, like ones that are no longer being imported and very rarely, if ever would, kind of like this Argentine carbine. And even these, I forget the designation of these. I picked this one up recently. This is one of the Indian rifles that was converted to 7.62 NATO. And this one I got at a local auction. It wasn't terrible what I paid for it. Of course, it wasn't a steal. And I did see an online auction where there was a company that cut down some of these. And there were two of them, somebody must have bought the examples, where they were shortened with muzzle devices and that. And as a novelty, even though they're not a designated collector's item, I thought I'd like to get them, but they went for a pretty high price. Now you'd be thinking that with the economy the way it is, and a lot of the auctions going on, that, you know, you could find some deals. And I'll tell you my experience with auctions was my Star Model B. Now I always wanted a Model B that was an early one. The Model B started production in 9mm in the late 30s. This one here was produced in 1945. And they had several changes, variation to, you know, the magazine and the design over the years, but it was in production until the 1980s in one way or another. But I always wanted an early one from the World War II era because of the markings. And even though this has not been issued, I checked the serial numbers, this was not a contract issue that was sent to a foreign country during the war. It was made at the very end of the war itself. So I always wanted one of these older versions for my collection. Something like this, I'll tell you a story on this one. When they came in years ago, they were being sold, and there was somebody on the gun broker who must have got a batch, like 5 or 6 of them, and he would put one up for auction every few weeks. And these handguns, I don't know what they were going for, like when a lot of the major surplus dealers online would sell them. But they were going up for about 450 units, close to 5. And the condition of them were all about the same, okay, like this one here. So there weren't no pristine examples, but everybody wanted to get in, and as the supply dried up, so the price went up. So when I was cruising around just looking at all these auctions and all the Milsurp stuff and going through, you know, killing time, I found that gun. And I said, oh, well, you know, I always wanted to get one, but I really don't want to pay over half a K for it, okay? So I just fooling around and I put in an extremely low bid. And this is like prior to the auction, like 2 weeks before the auction, you can put your bid online and everything. So 180 units. And I said, I forgot all about it because there were some other things, you know, Mauser rifles and a couple British guns and some other stuff that I just put these really low bids on right when they're first listed, and of course they get surpassed. Well, I figured the same with this one, but I guess the demand or people looking for older Star Model B is not the way it was in the market before because that low bid came in. And the thing is, when you do these online auctions, you have to read that agreement and you got to agree to their terms before you can bid. And I think I did read, it was 28% premium on your bid. Okay, and this is going to affect how these auctions and your value, your final value comes out. So that 180 unit bid come out to a $295 thing rigmarole when it was all said and done. Plus I had to pay a transfer fee to my FFL dealer. Now there was a person that I heard him say that when you get, and sales tax, which something in the past was never charged. So when you rack up a large sum of money, okay, and a lot of it too, they tax you, and then if you're using a card, there's a 3% fee there and everything else. It's very easy to place a bid and maybe win, but if you rack up a high value, okay, one guy said you're looking, whatever you put down, roughly calculate plus 40%. Okay, between shipping, sales tax, and the fees, 28%, that's almost 30 right there, okay? So you're figuring that high percentage. Now with the economy sucking, a lot of stuff is coming up, a lot of nice stuff. And also, when you're bidding sight unseen, you have to kind of trust the company, because I went to a local auction, seen a bunch of surplus stuff, some stuff that I really liked. But when I went there, I could actually go and physically handle it. They looked well or they looked mediocre. But out of all the guns, okay, every single one of them had a bore that was shot out. So whoever had these or wherever they came from, they must have shot them with corrosive ammo, never cleaned them, and I mean, they were gone. All the bores. And I had to pass on all of them except one. Out of 6 guns I looked at, I was interested in 1 or 2, and they were crap. The one that I wasn't interested in, okay, I had a mint bore. And there was another rifle I thought was a little beat up, wasn't going for much, a Spanish gun, but I picked the thing up and I didn't even bother with the bore scope. The rust was leaching out of the barrel. Okay. And these firearms went, they got bid up. Somebody really bid up one gun that was really nice on the outside, but the bore was gone. So you have to be careful in that respect also. And with the high rates of fees and add-ons and commissions, it's tough. It makes it tough on the people selling. Okay, because if you're looking at 30-40% on top of it, you better really like the gun or really get it at a price, or you pass on it. So it's kind of a tough thing. Like I said, you can still go out, and if you missed out, like I bought this one, I kind of should have bought it 15 years ago, but I didn't. But I found something where I picked this up recently. And actually, the price has kind of backed off a little on this stuff. I don't believe inventory's moving in any realm of firearms. But then again, I did go to an auction where some pretty rare, unusual, and stuff you do not see come out all the time. And the bidding was quite intense. Okay, nothing was at a bargain price, put it to you that way. Things went high. So depending on also what it is, like I said, these things were popular, people wanted them. Now, not so much, okay? But the semi-automatic version of the M3 grease gun with the 16-inch barrel, I seen one of them come up and go for quite a hefty amount, along with some earlier rare FNFALs, which got up there into the 3 to 5K area. They were some unusual models. And there were some other very unusual things that went pretty much quite high. I tell you, it wasn't sold at a loss, put it to you that way. So it kind of depends, but your Mausers, your Enfields, Enfields have gotten crazy, even though they're an extremely common gun, much like your Mosin Nagants. Mosin Nagants are hanging in the 3.5, area, 3.5 C notes, around there. Maybe if you got a nicer one with different markings and that, you can go up over that, but just the plain Jane ones are in that ballpark. Good KR98s are all still over 1K and even more. Stuff like these Argentine Mausers and good clean Mausers, Spanish ones, if you got a minty one with all the markings, the crest and everything sharp, and it hasn't been refinished, those are examples of Mausers. I had several of them years ago. Those go for about 700 to 800 units. Okay, they have held their value, and when they do pop up, they are hard to find and are awful nice to have in your collection with a good bore, good exterior finish, and nice wood. That's about the going rate, and I don't consider that unreasonable, because finding a gun in that condition is not an everyday event. Okay, generally somebody probably not doing too well in this economy is liquidating some choice pieces out of your collection. Once you get something like that in your collection, you kind of really don't want to liquidate it, okay, because you're not going to find another example in that condition easily. Okay, so that's about the situation. It's a little bit of both. I've seen quality stuff, rare stuff still holding its value in auctions, and I've seen some stuff that was, during kind of like this is drying up, so everyone's buying them, the price is going up. I've seen the price kind of slip back on some. Okay, so that's kind of where it is, All right, thank you, and stay tuned.